Top 5 Most Recent Active and Unidentified American Serial Killers. Number 1. The Little Rock Slasher. Location: Little Rock, Arkansas. Known active years: 2020 to 2021. Suspect description: 6 feet tall, young black man with slender build. On the 24th of August 2021, 64-year-old Larry Eugene McChristian was found stabbed to death on a neighbor's porch after being reported missing 2 days prior. When police looked at the neighbor's surveillance footage, it was discovered that McChristian, who had been walking alone, had been stabbed once by a suspect who returned a short while later to stab him again. On the 23rd of September 2021, 62-year-old Jeff Welch was found by his friend slumped over on his porch with puncture wounds on his neck, and an autopsy revealed that his death was a homicide. On the 11th of April 2021, 41-year-old Deborah Walker was walking home when a stranger ran up to her and stabbed her 15 times and left her to bleed out. Fortunately, Walker was taken to a hospital in time to save her life. Unfortunately, less than 24 hours later, a 40-year-old homeless man named Marlon Anthony Franklin was found stabbed to death less than a block away from where Walker had been attacked. Although Walker was able to give a suspect description, the serial killer is still at large. Before we continue, hit the subscribe button. Number 2. The Chicago Strangler. Location: Chicago, Illinois. Known active years: 2001 to 2021. Suspect description: likely male. The Chicago Strangler's earliest known victim was a woman named Angela Ford, who vanished in 1999 only to be found days later strangled and unconscious. She was in a coma until 2001 when she died. In 2007, 2 women named Teresa Bunn and Hazel Lewis were found strangled to death, stripped and set alight in dumpsters within 48 hours of each other. 47 other women in Chicago have fallen victim to the Chicago Strangler, with the most recent one being reported in 2021. Nearly 50% of the victims had a history of sex work, and around 75% were black women. All were between the ages of 18 and 58. All of the victims' remains are dumped outdoors in alleyways or near abandoned buildings. The victims are always strangled and partially or fully stripped before being dumped. Whilst most think that these 51 unsolved murders are the work of a serial killer, Chicago police have been reluctant to blame them on just one killer. Be that as it may, whoever is behind all these murders is still at large. Number 3. The Memphis Serial Murderer. Location: South Memphis, Tennessee. Known active years: 2011 to 2015. Suspect description: 24-year-old black man with cornrows. In January of 2011, in South Memphis, the body of 31-year-old Tamakia McKinney, a possible sex worker, was found shot to death near a cemetery at 2:15 a.m. About a month later, 28-year-old sex worker Jessica Lewis was found shot to death at 12:05 a.m. near the same cemetery. Just 4 days later, at the same location at 5:45 a.m., 44-year-old Rhonda Wells was also found shot to death. 2 days later, 26-year-old Katrina Peterson was also shot, but she managed to run to safety and was taken to hospital, where she ultimately survived and gave police a description of the shooter. In September of 2015, a 25-year-old Juanita Gilmore was found stabbed to death in a cemetery, and it is believed that it was the work of the same serial killer but using a different MO. This serial killer is still at large. Number 4. The Long Island Serial Killer. Location: Long Island, New York. Known active years: 1996 to 2010. Suspect description: none. In early May 2010, a 24-year-old sex worker named Shannon Gilbert made a panicked 911 call which lasted 23 minutes, and in which she was heard running, banging on doors for help, and afterwards saying, "They are trying to kill me." She had just come from a client's house in Oak Beach, but after that she was never seen alive again. Her disappearance prompted a search for her in the area, but it wasn't until December that remains were found. They were not Gilbert's remains, however, but those of Maureen Brainard, Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. 4 months later, the remains of Jessica Taylor, whose partial remains had been discovered 8 years earlier in another area, were discovered along the same road as the others. The same search then unearthed the remains of an unidentified female toddler, an unidentified Asian person, and Valerie Mack, whose partial remains had also been found over a decade earlier. They then found the remains of 2 unidentified women, one of which was the mother of the unidentified toddler. Gilbert's remains were discovered last in December of 2011. Because of the similarities in the causes of death and where the remains were found, the police believe that this is the work of one serial killer who lives in Long Island. John Bitroff, a carpenter from Long Island, is suspected of the murders and has been convicted of killing 2 other sex workers, but there's not yet enough evidence that he is the Long Island serial killer. Thus, the Long Island serial killer is still at large. Before we continue, hit the subscribe button. Number 5. The West Mesa Bone Collector. Location: Albuquerque, New Mexico. Known active years: 2001 to 2005. Suspect description: Central American man. On the 2nd of February 2009, Christine Ross was walking her dog Ruka around the West Mesa when Ruka bounded off and returned with a human leg bone. Ross called the police, who eventually unearthed the remains of 11 mostly Hispanic women between the ages of 15 and 32 and 1 fetus. This is believed to be the work of a serial killer who is linked to a sex trafficking ring and who targeted mostly sex workers or women involved with drugs. Whilst anonymous tips have been given to the authorities, no one has yet been charged, so this serial killer is still at large.